This is not the end of the Greater Cincinnati Democrats, but I feel like it's a new beginning as we come back to where we started. This is where we started 2.5 years ago with a presentation by the Islamic Center of the United States, Greater Cincinnati, and Karen is here to tell us more about their programs and what they're doing and how we can share in what they're doing. And without further ado, here it is, Karen Dabdoub.
It's on, the green light is on, but I don't.
Turn the volume up on the unit over there.
Volume up here.
Yeah, next to the green light, there's a volume sign.
This needs to be turned off.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's working. It's working. Thank you. Hey, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for inviting me to be here today with you. I'm really excited to have an opportunity to share with you. And I thought the program you were talking about was the one after the massacre in New Zealand. I was there for that. The one about the Palestinian situation, I was not there. I was not able to be there for that. I was out of town. But my husband is Palestinian, so I'm very aware of that whole situation. So, yeah, I'm glad you were able to go to that. So what I wanted to do today is I've got a short presentation for those of you who maybe weren't here the last time or need a review to talk about some of the basics about the Islamic faith and the Muslim community, just very briefly, and then to move on into what are the challenges that the American Muslim community is facing these days, and how is the organization that I belong to, the Council on American-Islamic Relations, how are we working to address the challenges that are before us. So I hope you'll have questions, and I'd love to answer questions, so, but it probably will be more efficient if we can save our questions till the end, if that's okay with all of you. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're just going to go through the basics, like I said, the basic beliefs and the 5 pillars. So, I like to start off with, talking about Islam is the name of the religion and Muslims are the people who practice the religion, because sometimes, not so much anymore, but I used to hear sometimes Muslims being referred to as Islams or, things like that. So just to get the terminology straight, Islam is the religion and the Muslims are the people. So in terms of what we believe, and I'll be speaking in terms of what we believe as Muslims, and just in very general and broad terms, because Muslims are human beings like everyone else, and the Muslim community, like every other faith community, runs the gamut, from the people who are perhaps Muslim in name only, don't really practice the religion or only practice parts of it, all the way to those who are trying to be very, very faithful. To those who even go off the far end and into extremism. So those are all parts of every faith community everywhere in the world, including the Muslim community. So Muslim is a person who submits their own will to the will of God, and we do that. We demonstrate that through our testimony of faith, which is in Arabic called the Shahada. And there's a lot of Arabic language terminology that gets used in Islam because our holy book, the Quran, was revealed in the Arabic language. So I always try to make sure to include the English equivalent as well. So, and a Muslim, of course, is a person who practices the faith of Islam. So these are our basic beliefs and principles. So we have belief that there is one God and only one God. We believe in the existence of angels, the prophets, divine scriptures, God's sovereignty over creation, and the day of judgment. So those are the basic set of beliefs. And this goes for all Muslims, whether they're Sunni, Shia, or whatever. These basic beliefs are the same. So we use the word Allah when we refer to God because that's the word in the Arabic language for God. So anyone who speaks the Arabic language, no matter what, whether they're Muslim or Christian or Jewish, this is the word we would use for referring to God, Allah. And it literally means the one and only God. So as I said, Muslims believe in the existence of angels. We don't believe we can see them. We believe they're creatures made out of light, but that we're not able to see them. We believe that God has sent prophets to bring the messages, and those messages have evolved over time. And we believe that this list of prophets are some of the prophets that are mentioned in the Quran. These are the major prophets. I'm sure you're probably familiar with most of them. We believe that God has sent revelation or scriptures to several of those prophets, that Abraham received the scrolls, Moses received the Torah and the Ten Commandments, David received the Psalms, Jesus received the original gospel, and we believe that the Quran was received by the Prophet Muhammad. And we ask God's peace and blessings to be upon all of the prophets. So we do believe that there will come an end to this world and that there will be a day of judgment. And we believe that our purpose in life, the purpose for which God created us, is to recognize our Creator and to worship our Creator and to serve God through serving the creation. In other words, to serve humanity, to serve the planet, the animals, the plants. That those are all things that God has given us as gifts and trust, and that we're supposed to take care of them. And we believe that on the day of judgment we'll be held accountable. So when we move on to what are the basic practices of the faith, we have the Declaration of Faith, which we already discussed, prayer, fasting during Ramadan, and Ramadan starts in just about a month, a little less than a month, charity, the giving of charity, and then the pilgrimage. So as I mentioned earlier, the Shahada, or the testimony of faith, is that I testify or I bear witness that there's no God except one God, and I testify that Muhammad is the messenger of God. So, this testimony of faith, declares our belief in God and belief in all the prophets that God sent, and implies our intentions to abide by what our faith teaches us. So we believe that daily prayer is an important part of our faith practice. And so the prayers, there are 5 prayers during the day, and they're spread out throughout the day, and are coinciding with certain periods of the day according to the movements of the sun. So the first prayer of the day is before the first light of dawn. The second one is just past, when the sun has just passed the zenith in the sky. And the third one is like late afternoon, early evening. The fourth one is right at sunset, and the last one is after dark. And so those times are spread out throughout the day. In the wintertime, as you can imagine, those times are a little more compressed as the days are shorter. And in the summertime, those times are a little more spread out as the days become longer. We fast during the month of Ramadan. Who here has heard of Ramadan? Basically everybody. Okay. So when I started doing this, giving these talks and things about 20, 25 years ago, in a room this size, I might get 1 or 2 hands. So I think that's some progress, that people at least have heard of it. Most people also know that Ramadan is the month of fasting for Muslims. We fast during the daytime from before the first light of dawn. In other words, we stop eating, we get up early and we eat, but we stop eating before that first prayer of the day, so before the first light, and then we fast throughout the day until sunset. And then we break our fast at sunset each day. And so we can eat and drink during those dark hours of the day. And so again, as you can imagine, in the summer when the night is shorter, it gives us, we break our fast later in the day, and we begin our fast earlier in the day. And in the winter, again, the daytime is shorter, the nighttime is longer, and so that's reversed. One of the benefits of that, of course, is that as we're moving into the longer days of summer in the southern hemisphere, they're moving into the shorter days of winter. And so our calendar is a lunar-based calendar, and the lunar year is 11 days shorter than the solar year. So every year, the first day of Ramadan, or any other date on the Islamic religious calendar, is going to move backwards by 11 days according to the solar calendar. And so over a period of 30 some odd years, Ramadan will move through all 4 seasons, okay? And so while we're, having Ramadan in the summer, in the southern hemisphere, they get to fast in the winter when it's a lot easier. And then vice versa. When we're fasting in the winter, they're fasting in the summer. And so it's not like any one place in the world has to always have their fasting in the summer, or always get to have it in the winter. It really makes a difference because in us being in the more northern latitudes, in the summertime, in the longest days of summer, our fasting is 17 hours, something?
Close to 18.
Yeah, 17 and a half hours, I think. In the winter, it might be 11 and a half, 12 hours, or even less. Might even be like 10 hours, which is really easy. So again, that flip-flops, throughout that 30-some year cycle. Keeps it fair for everybody. And we talk a lot about, the fact that we don't eat anything or drink anything during those hours of fasting. But the focus really is supposed to be on strengthening ourselves, strengthening our ability to control our self-will, our willpower, and also in spending more time in connecting with our Creator, more time in praying and reading the scriptures and things like that. So the focus really is on strengthening ourselves spiritually as well as physically to meet the challenges that we face all throughout the year. And then, for those who, for instance, children, those who may be ill, women who are pregnant or nursing, those who are traveling, there are many reasons why a person would be exempt from fasting. If somebody, just got a really bad cold or the flu, you stop fasting until you get well, and then after Ramadan, you can make those days up. Same thing for women who are pregnant or nursing, people who are traveling, you can make those days up. But for someone who, for instance, might be insulin-dependent diabetic and cannot fast, then what they can do instead is to feed the hungry. In place of each day of fasting, they would give food or give a certain amount of money to those who feed people, to feed someone who is not able to provide for their own meals, and that is a sacrifice equal to the sacrifice of fasting. And so there are always exemptions and provisions made for hardship and things like that. So don't feel sorry for us. We love our month of Ramadan. It's a very, very special time. It's a communal practice. We gather in the evenings for special meals with family and friends or with the whole community to break the fast. The Clifton Mosque provides an evening meal every single day for the whole month of Ramadan, and anybody can come and eat. Anybody at all, Muslim or otherwise, anybody can come and eat. And typically there are about 250 to 350 people who eat there every single night during Ramadan. So that's another aspect of Ramadan, is it reminds us that when we're going hungry during the day, we know where our meal is at the end of the day. But it reminds us that we have to be aware that there are people who don't know where their next meal is coming from or when, and to be compassionate and to give more in charity to those who need it. So Ramadan, contains all of those things, not just going hungry during the day. And so the fourth of our 5 pillars is the giving of charity. And we believe that, all the material goods, all the abilities that we have to earn our living, all of those things are gifts from God. And so because of that, we are responsible to give a small amount back from the excess that we have once our family's basic needs have been taken care of. The excess that we have, we're responsible to give at least 2.5% of that each year to those who don't have enough. And so this is a particular type of charity. There's also a general type of charity that's left up to the individual, how much they want to give and when and to whom and all that. But this specific type of charity called zakat is a responsibility that those who have more than what they need are responsible for giving to those who don't have enough. And then if even if you don't have excess in terms of wealth, just doing a good deed, being nice to others, smiling at them, helping people, that's also considered a charity as well. And then the last of our 5 pillars is that once in our lifetime, if we're physically able and financially able to do so, that we take this pilgrimage and we go to the city of Mecca and we spend a few days there engaging in acts of worship that remind us of Prophet Abraham and his wife Hajar and the the journeys that they made, the struggles that they had in remaining obedient to God through a great many challenges. So, the pilgrimage is really focused again on increasing our spirituality, getting us closer to God, asking for forgiveness of sins, giving in charity, and those types of things. It's really a tremendous gathering each year. I think the numbers are up to about 4 or 5 million nowadays. And so it really is a tremendous gathering of people from every part of the globe. And when you go, you see people of every color, of every socioeconomic background, every age. It really is a truly tremendous experience. I was fortunate enough with my family to go in 2006, and we were able to take our children who were young adults at that time. And it really was a really amazing experience, one that I'll never forget. So I think that takes us to the end. Yeah, that takes us to the end of our basic presentation. And so I was asked to talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges that the Muslim community faces these days. I'm sure it will come as no surprise to any of you that this current administration has increased those challenges to many communities of color, to immigrant communities, to minority communities all across this country. And so what we see is that since this administration took office, we're seeing a tremendous increase in discrimination against the individuals in the American Muslim community, hate crimes against individuals as well as against institutions like mosques and other organizations. We're seeing the rhetoric, the negative rhetoric being ramped up. We saw that during the campaigns that, he was using rhetoric against the Hispanic community, against the Black community, against the Jewish community, against the Muslim community, against the gay community, against women, on and on and on and on and on, as a way to gin up fear and appeal to his base. So, that has, as we all know, has not stopped. Almost immediately, well, during the campaign, I'm sure we all remember when he was talking about we're going to find a way to stop all Muslims from entering the United States. And so very soon after he took office, we saw the Muslim travel ban. And it took him 3 tries to get it to the point where the Supreme Court would approve of it, because it was challenged in court and continues to be challenged in court, by the way. And our organization, CARE, Council on American-Islamic Relations, is one of the organizations, the national level, and the forefront of filing these lawsuits against the Trump administration for things like this Muslim travel ban and other policies that are discriminatory by nature. And so, one of the things that the Supreme Court said when they approved this is, okay, you've got to have a waiver process in place. Okay, we'll put a waiver process in place. Well, what we've discovered is that the waiver process is a joke. That only 2% of the people who are applying for waivers, and actually what waivers have to be offered automatically, which they're not being offered. And then of all those who apply, only 2% are being approved for waivers. So 98% of people who are applying for waivers are not being approved. So, this is just one example of how this a policy of this current administration continues to negatively impact the Muslim community. And you might think, well, okay, nobody has the right, nobody who's not an American citizen has necessarily an inherent right to come to the United States. And I don't think there's really any of us that are arguing that particular point. What a lot of people don't realize is that this policy separates families. And so, for someone who has come as an immigrant, who has obtained their U.S. citizenship and wants to bring a family member, or wants to even have grandma come over for son or daughter's wedding, or someone who needs a family member to come over and help with medical care, at least temporarily, of a family member, those kinds of things. This has real impact on people. There's a young man up in the Columbus area who needed to have an organ transplant. And normally, to get approved for an organ transplant, you have to have family around you that's going to be there to take care of you when you come out of the hospital. Well, he had no family here. His family was in Syria. They weren't allowed to come. They were refused entry. And so the community had to come together and put together a family care plan for him, because if they hadn't done that, he would not have received the transplant and he would have died. So this kind of thing has real impact on individuals, and can even result in someone's death. So it's very, very serious. Not being able to come for granddaughter's wedding is heartbreaking, but you're not going to die. So it really is serious. There was a case out in California not too long ago where a father and little boy were citizens. The mother was not a citizen, but the little boy was 2 years old and had some type of congenital disease. I don't remember exactly what it was, and he was literally dying, and they would not allow his mother to come and see him. She was able to finally come 2 days before he passed away, the little boy, and by then he was comatose. So he didn't even know that his mother was there. So, those kinds of situations truly are heartbreaking and completely and totally unnecessary. So, that's the kind of thing that we're facing. Besides the fact that we have, after the massacre in New Zealand, and the manifesto that this person prepared is, going around the world like wildfire, and it is inspiring white supremacists in this country to perpetrate the same type of thing. And so there have been several plots just very, very recently that have been thwarted, thank God, by law enforcement. There have been multiple attacks on mosques as well as other houses of worship just in the past few weeks. So this ideology, is, as we all know, is virulent. It is it's very dangerous, and it's spreading fast. So and when we have a president who says that in response to what happened in Charlottesville, that there are good people on both sides, that says to the white supremacists, the neo-Nazis and people like that, that they have approval from the very, very top. And it gives them energy to do even more of the harm that they do. So how are we responding? How are we dealing with these many challenges that we face? Well, for many years we have been putting out civil rights reports. And so this is our 2017 Civil Rights Report, and in it we talk about the, we have lots of statistics and lots of charts and things like that to show the increases in, hate crimes and discrimination, things like that. We also, this is our 2018 Civil Rights Report. This picture on the front is a picture of a mosque. I believe this was one in Missouri that was burned down. And a lot of times these things don't make it on the national news. You don't hear about that. But just documenting what is actually going on is really, really important. So if it's documented, then we can begin to formulate strategies for how to deal with specific issues like the burning of mosques, or even issues like local jurisdictions refusing to give building permits when a community is growing and they need to build a larger house of worship or build an additional one. We're seeing in many jurisdictions around the country, local jurisdictions, that they are being refused building permits. And sometimes the local community objects using catchphrases or sort of hidden, what we call them, dog whistles. Sometimes they're quite open with their bigotry, and they'll pass flyers around the neighborhood saying, we don't want those people in our neighborhood. A lot of times it is, more of the dog whistle type stuff. And just having, 2016 report, 2017, 2018, and going much farther back than that, but, gives us the ability to talk about, the progression of what's going on. One of the other things that we've been working on for many years is where's the money coming from? Because the organizations that really promote fear of the American Muslim community and work to increase that fear and hatred and spread misinformation. When we look at, who's doing this and, how they're all connected with each other, that's what this one is about. Another report that we did was talking about the money that they've raised. Where is that money coming from? And who is donating to these groups and how much money are they getting and how they're, supporting each other, how they're all on each other's boards and, things like that. And how well they actually get paid. Did you know that hate is actually a very profitable industry these days? Some of these folks are making $250,000 a year pumping this stuff out. So we have another report that's going to be coming out very soon. It's not yet in print form, but it's going to be talking more about foundations in this country that are donating money to hate groups. Another way that we've worked to combat this type of hate, and this goes back many, many years, is we produce these guides. This one is for employers. We have one for educators. We have one for law enforcement, even one for the prisons, to help the people that are running these institutions to understand a little bit more about some of the basics, some of the stuff that we just talked about, so that they can do a better job of, dealing with their Muslim employees, taking care of their Muslim students, for instance, that type of thing. Another way that we do it is we print little copies of the Constitution and pass out to people because, as we all know, the U.S. Constitution is only on paper if we're not fighting to keep it in force. And it's not going to protect itself. We have to, that's our job as citizens, is to protect this document and keep it as the supreme law of the land. That's really, really important. Another way that we work to fight it is with humor.
I love it.
Yeah, so this is, it's gum, okay? But this one is, it's like take two and call a Muslim in the morning. Multi-symptom relief for chronic Islamophobia. Islamophobin. Maximum strength formula treats blind intolerance, unthinking bigotry, and irrational fear of Muslims. Okay? Yeah, so we'll have a little fun with it as well. This one is just straight up gum. Tastes like freedom. No bans. Ban bad breath, not Muslims. Flavorful splash removes foul executive orders. So, we try to have a little fun with it as well. It's all very, very serious stuff. But every once in a while you gotta laugh too, so that you can keep on going. So, we also produce an annual report in every local chapter. And so, we talk about the challenges that we face. We talk about, outline the different activities and programs, that we organize here in the local area. So our government affairs work, our outreach work, the legal work that we do. We have an attorney on staff, and she handles cases of individuals who face discrimination, children who face bullying in school because they're Muslim, people who are the victims of hate crimes. We had a young woman up in Dayton just recently, was shopping in her local Myers store, and there was a man in the store who was making nasty comments about her, and then at one point he actually hit her and shoved her and made her fall down. So, those kinds of things happen, and so we have an attorney on staff who takes these cases free of charge and helps these people to receive the legal help that they might need, whether it's employment discrimination or dealing with a school that doesn't recognize that calling a child a raghead or a terrorist is not okay, that that's not just a joke, those kinds of things. So she does a lot of work in helping to protect our community as well. So, we talk about that. And all these are up here. If you'd like to come and take a look afterwards, I'll leave them up here for a little while. And I think I'll stop there and take any questions. Yes, sir.
Maybe you already said this. I'm wondering
I don't think it's on.
I'm wondering about the number of people in the world with various religions. I mean, do you have any idea how many Catholics there are, how many Muslims there are?
I couldn't speak to how many Catholics there are, for instance, but I believe some of the latest numbers are that worldwide the Christian community is somewhere around 2 billion or a little over 2 billion. The Muslim community is somewhere around 1.7, 1.8 billion, something like that. And the Jewish community is somewhere in the neighborhood, I believe, of 9 or 10 million. If anybody else can correct me on that, I'm not exactly sure. And then, for instance, the Buddhist and Hindu communities, I just don't know.
That would be the largest group, probably?
That's a good question. I really don't know. I mean, India, is over 1 billion, and about 90%, I think, of India is Hindu. 10% of India is Muslim. So, yeah, thank you.
First question is, where can I get some no bands? And second one is, at my daughter's school, we have a lot of Muslim students from countries in West Africa. I'm curious about if there are any remarkable differences in instances of discrimination between Muslims from different parts of the world.
That's a really good question. I don't have any specific numbers on that. We do ask for people's ethnic background when we take a case, so those numbers are available somewhere. I just don't have them the top of my head, so I couldn't answer that. But I know in general, for instance, for myself, even though I wear a headscarf, I've never actually, been shouted at or told, go back where you come from or whatever. And I have to assume it's because I'm white and I have blue eyes and, and all of that. That even with the headscarf on, I still have a little bit of a pass. So, and I know that here in our local Cincinnati office, the majority of, I would say probably at least the majority or close to the majority of the cases that we get are folks who are, for instance, from the African communities and African-American communities. So, but I couldn't give you exact numbers on that. And where can you get the gum? I don't know if it's still available, but if it is, it would be at our CARE National website, which is care.com, CAIR.com. Our local website is carecincinnati.com.
In the back.
In the back, yeah.
Question, after Malcolm X, there was a big upsurge in African Americans, and I was wondering if that is still a large percentage of the population in this area. And also if you could just explain what the difference between Muslim and Muslim is.
Okay. And when you say surge in African Americans, you mean coming to the religion of Islam?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, actually it was the Nation of Islam, and then when their leader passed away, his son took over and brought the African American Muslim community, the majority of them, to mainstream Sunni Islam. The Nation of Islam is, to the best of my understanding, is sort of a derivation of Islam with some Christian elements included as well. And so it's not, they don't have the same beliefs and practices that mainstream Muslims have. But yes, about a third, I would say about a quarter to a third of the American Muslim community is African American. So to answer that part of your question. And the correct pronunciation is Muslim, but you'll hear everything from Muslim to Muslim to, and I think part of that derives from the fact that, in the Arabic language, there's one way to spell that word. But when you're transliterating, from the Arabic alphabet to the Latin alphabet, sometimes it gets spelled M-U-S-L-I-M and sometimes M-O-S-L-E-M, and so you get different pronunciations. But thank you, good question.
Yeah, I support the Southern Poverty Law Center, which keeps track of hate crimes. I wondered if there's any cooperation on a
Absolutely.
formal level
Yes.
because they've done such a great job.
Yes, they have done really good work. And they have in, probably the last 10 years at least, have focused on, at least part of their work has focused on the type of hate that the Muslim community receives from white supremacist groups and people like that, and the organizations that are specifically organized to create and increase hatred against Muslims. So they have focused on that. They do include that in their reports and things like that. And so we do, make sure that they have copies of our reports every year and that type of thing. Yeah.
Mine's more in the form of a suggestion than a question.
Yeah.
The Islam and Christian and Jewish faiths are all Abrahamic religion, monotheistic, all believe in the same God.
Right, right.
Each of you should appoint some representatives, put them in a room, and don't leave until you can settle all your differences and have one religion.
That's an idea.
I'll do it I'll help with a consulting fee.
So I have a question, and then can you talk about schisms? And you talk about like the difference between Sunni and Shia.
Sunni and Shia, yeah.
And also, are there reform movements?
Okay, so as far as Sunni and Shia are concerned, basic numbers, the Sunni Muslim community is about 85% of Muslims worldwide, including here in the United States, and the other 15% or so come from the Shia community. The basic beliefs and practices are pretty much the same. The way prayers are performed, there's some differences there. Some of the basic beliefs, depending on which sects among the Shia you're talking about, can be slightly different. The fundamental difference, it's a little hard to condense it into one quick answer because there are different sects among both sides. And so you can't just make one blanket statement that covers both sides. But in general, the difference started after Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, after he passed away. And so the word Sunni derives from the Arabic word which means, a tradition or traditional. And what we believe is, as Sunni Muslims, we believe that the tradition that the Prophet set up was that those in the community who were most capable would be the ones chosen by the community to lead. And those who now follow the Shia tradition, that started with, they believed that it should be someone in the family of the Prophet who should succeed him as at least the religious leader of the community, that those would be the people most capable. And so what we see today, for instance, in Iran is the Ayatollahs and all that, and what they call their supreme leader and all that, is a direct descendant from the Prophet's family. And so that's where the basic difference started was, who's, after the Prophet, is gone, who's going to lead the community? But then, over the last 1,400 years, that split has widened. But again, the basic beliefs are there, prayer, fasting, charity, pilgrimage, all those things are still the same. It's just how do you practice those things that becomes different.
Are there reformational movements?
Reformational movements. I think it's perhaps more, instead of like saying, oh, here's a Reformation mosque or, group or something like that, it really has been more community-wide across the world. You have, like I said at the beginning, you have that whole spectrum of people's belief and practice and things like that. But what I see happening, in the last 20, 30 years, especially as more Muslims come to the West, and people are, in the West, we're taught perhaps to question a lot. And especially someone like me who comes to the religion from a different faith community, I want to know everything that there is to know. First, I have a lot of questions I need to have answered. And so what I'm seeing now is that there's a lot more of a return to the original documents, and the ways of the original community, rather than, oh, this is just the way it's always been done, because that isn't true. It hasn't always been done that way. It's been done that way for maybe several generations, and so we can't remember further back than that. And so what we see a lot of times in the Muslim world is that things have become intertwined, religion has become intertwined with culture. And now, sometimes people don't know, if you don't know what the religion really teaches, you don't know how to separate that back out again. And so, as our children are being raised here, again, they're wanting to know, okay, I have to pray, but why? Where does that come from? And so we have to go back to the original documents and learn that and bring it back to, and all the prophets were very progressive people. They fought for the marginalized, no matter who they were. And so a return to those original documents is a return to that progressiveness as well. And so I see it in terms of that, and instead of like, particular church or organization or something like that. Yeah.
I'm sorry, we were talking about two different meetings.
Yes, we were, and they happened very close to each other, so that's why there was confusion.
I had low vision, I thought I remembered.
No, that's okay, that's okay.
But I have two parts to this question. Was it a difficult decision? I assume it wasn't, but at the Clifton Mosque to provide for the Nakba tour. I mean, and related to that, I mean, is there a Palestinian solidarity group within the Clifton Mosque? That's one question. The other one is, I don't know what you think about Ilhan Omar, Representative Omar. She's the only person in Congress that wears a hijab, and one of two Muslims in the House.
Actually, it's three.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's a representative from Indiana, Andre Carson, who's also Muslim.
Okay. All right. But there was a threat.
Yes.
Against her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let's just hope she makes it. But I don't know how most Muslims feel about her support of the Palestinians and wanting Israel to be a little bit less vicious towards them.
Yeah. Well, I think in general in the Muslim community around the world, including here in the United States, there is a recognition of the situation that the Palestinians face, and that they have not been afforded self-determination, and those types of things. So yeah, there definitely is a recognition of that, and support for Palestinians to be considered full citizens. Whether you're talking about a one-state solution or a two-state solution, that's not for the rest of us to say necessarily, but that there needs to be a positive solution that includes equity, and so there is that recognition definitely. As far as Ilhan Omar is concerned, yes, she is one of 3 Muslim members of the House of Representatives. The first person to be elected to the House was from the Muslim community was Keith Ellison, and from Minnesota, and he did not run for re-election because he ran for Secretary of State of Minnesota, or was it Attorney General? Attorney General, thank you. Yes, he was. He won his race. So, but Andre Carson was the second, and then Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib are third and fourth. And Ilhan Omar is someone who has, obviously, we've all seen, has been very, very outspoken on this issue of Palestine. Even though she herself is not Palestinian, she's actually, as you probably know, originally from Somalia. She came here as a child as a refugee. And so she understands what it's like to be a refugee. And she understands how important this issue is and how central this issue is to the entire situation in the Middle East. And how important it is for this situation to be resolved once and for all. And so she is very outspoken about that. She has had her life threatened many times. And I'm really impressed with how strong she is and how, whether you agree with her or not, but how willing she is to stand up for what she believes in and to speak out. And so, I think that's something that deserves at least a certain amount of respect. Again, whether you agree with her or not, but that she's willing to stand up and speak out for what she believes in. And I think obviously she offends people, some people with her views, some people, not everybody of course, but there are some people who are offended by her views. But we have to start with a conversation. And a situation like that a conversation is not going to start with everyone agreeing. It's going to start with very strong disagreement. But we have to be able to get to a place where everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Hi, is Sufism a third force within Islam?
It's not a third, sect, for instance, like Sunni and Shia. There are Sufis among the Sunni and Sufis among the Shia. It's a way of practicing the faith that puts more of an emphasis on, some people call it mysticism. Some people call it spirituality, things like that. But it's just a slightly different philosophy or way of looking at religion and practicing religion. But you'll find it among both major sects. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to quit now. I really want to get some of this Islamophobia. It spreads love. Take two and call a Muslim in the morning may result in peaceful coexistence.
If only, right?
If only.
If only.
If only. So we really appreciate your effort today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you again, folks. A really good presentation. We have our speaker, and if she's not smart enough to get out of here quick, then you can come up and ask her any questions that you still have. We do have a program next week. The program next week is done by the Ohio Justice and Policy Center, and it's done by the staff, whoever that is. So come next week because the Ohio Justice and Policy Center is going to be here and will tell us about whatever that is.
It's a good organization. They do really good work.
Good work. And after that, we have some pretty deep stuff coming up. The Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy of School Funding is going to be here the following week after that. So Bill Phillips is going to be here. And then we have Jill Schiller. It only gets better, folks. Please take home these papers. I have them. And we go through May 28th with our current schedule. Go for it. It's a really nice schedule. Yes, may I help you?
There's a few Ollie catalogs left on the counter.
Ollie catalogs. Go for it. You know what the high cost of Ollie is, right?
The catalog's free.
The catalog's free, but does it cost you to register?
$85.
How much?
$90 per term. And $5.
That's got to be really inexpensive for a course of.
It's a bargain.
It's a bargain.
day, all week.
Oh my goodness. So, yes.
You're gonna talk about both? We have elections coming up, it's supposed to get done 2020.
We have elections coming up, and we will be dealing with those. Let me tell you, if there are candidates coming up, like Marlene is coming up in 2019, we will make sure that you know about what elections are coming, because and part of the problem is that not all the people have registered that they're going to be running for whatever.
Well, just talking about support, I was just saying, our support, I see, what we need to do to support our 2020 candidates. So, to be.
And the path forward. Yeah, but we still have a path to go in 2019. No, it's true. We have 2019 coming up, yes.
We thank you, brother, for the work you did in putting together this wireless.
This is a thank you for Stanley Inslee.
It worked great.
I think we even heard it in the back. So thank you, Stanley, for helping us today. Thank you. Okay. Have a great day, folks.